So we're going to move on to our next session, which is on mental health and psychosocial support for survivors, holistic programmatic activities for survivors. Ms. Pearl from IOM will be taking that session for us.
I need some volunteers. 7 volunteers. Just trust me. 7 volunteers. Yes, please. First 7 people to come out. Okay. So I have 3 females. Gender balance.
Is it giveaway?
Something like that. Maybe. Can I have any guys?
Guys.
Thank you. 4, 5, 6. Please come. Yes, come. So 7. Okay. So you turn your card so it's visible to everyone. So we can see these letters. They are going to form, this is an English word. So we have C, D, E, I, T, and X. This is a word. You are going to direct them to form this word. So in the order in which they are standing now, this makes no sense. So you need to direct them. So you're like telling the first person, please go to the 3rd place. Everybody is going to do this work. And we have limited time. It's almost lunchtime. So who goes where? I'm going to take somebody from every table to direct them. Okay, so who moves? Who do you think should move? Okay, E, go to the 1st place. So who should move?
To where?
X should go where?
Yeah.
Okay. What? I should go to the 4th place. No? Okay, so where should I go? Who said you? Wow. Thank you. Excited. Thank you for volunteering. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to be talking about mental health and psychosocial support for survivors. My name is Pearl Osamudiame. I work with IOM. And in the course of our discussion, we're going to be going through definitions and principles of MHPSS, responding to the psychosocial needs of returning migrants, and psychological first aid. When you hear psychosocial, what comes to mind? Anybody? Okay, so that's like 2 words in one. Psyche and social. So we're looking at the relation between the psyche and the social. So psyche is the inner mind, while social is the environment around you. So we're looking at the relationship between the two. How do your feelings react to the circumstances in your environment? How does your environment influence your feelings and your thoughts? How do you react to factors in your environment? So that's what we mean by psychosocial. Next slide, please. Then we come to mental health. So when we're talking about mental health, we're looking at the well-being, mental health well-being, how how people are able to realize their potential. So how do you cope with the stressors in your environment? So the happenings around you, the situations around you, how are you able to cope with those factors around you? That's what we mean by mental health well-being. So you're being able to cope with those stressors, being able to be productive and contribute in your community. That's what we mean by mental health well-being. So we see psychosocial support and mental health as a process of facilitating resilience. You're distracting my technical support. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're looking at a process of facilitating resilience within individuals and families and communities. In this process, we're respecting their dignity, helping them to cope. So looking at what is within and how they can use what is within to cope with the stressors around them. So we're not like introducing new things, but helping the person realize your potentials, realizing your strengths, and helping that person to be able to cope with the stressors around that. So we're empowering you to care for yourself and care for your community. Who is the VOT? An earlier session already ran through this. So we're looking at an individual who has been transported, who has been moved, harbored, or received through the use of force, deception, false information, abusing his or her status of vulnerability, someone who has been bought or sold with the purpose of exploitation. So exploitation can take various forms, like we were told earlier: sexual exploitation, labor exploitation, domestic servitude, slavery, organs removals. So when we look at the consequences of trafficking, torture, and severe distress on individuals, we can have various consequences like health issues, socioeconomic issues, even legal issues, and all these impact on the mental health of the victim or the survivor. So the person can be having reactions like headaches, backaches, neck pains. We're seeing these physical symptoms, but they are being aggravated or being caused by psychological problem. So these reactions like headaches, trembling, sweating, even BP, which you say, oh, okay, I'm just sick, I just have headache, I need Panadol. But that headache may be as a result of the stressor or the experience that you just had. Then we can also see psychological reactions like despair, helplessness, insomnia, anger, distrust, nightmares. And sometimes we can have substance abuse and dependence. We can also have social reactions like feeling isolation, loneliness, inability to maintain relationships, and rejection of family and community members. So what are the needs of victims of trafficking? They can have immediate needs like safety and security, shelter, legal aid and counseling. Then sometimes they can have medium-term needs like skills building, family tracing, also legal assistance too. Then they can also have long-term needs like economic stabilization. They can also have long-term needs like medical assistance too, as a result of their experience. And these experiences that they've had can also cause negative consequences for them, like them being confused as to who they actually are, because they've been subject to violence and extreme deprivation at point of living, during travel, lacking official identity. Then when they come back, you can also have cases of identity crisis too, because you're coming back and maybe when you were going with so much hopes, you were just maybe a child of the family, and you're coming back with a label, like someone expressed earlier, like coming back with a different identity, like returnee or so your identity changes and you're coping with that. Then sometimes coming back, you can be seen or perceived as a failure. And so you may even be feeling that sense of being a failure, which has also affected your self-identity. Then looking at social elements, you can also have cases of dehumanization, which you experienced outside your country, that's in your place of travel. Then you now coming back and discovering that things may have changed and it's not just like the way you imagined. Things are not the way they were when you left them. So that's also a shock for you. Then looking at the communal level, who are you to your significant others? From citizen to migrant, from a resource to a problem. Then you can also see they seeing you as maybe a failure too, and the change in your economic status too. You're coming back with nothing, you're starting afresh. All those are consequences of your experience that you now have to deal with when you've come back. Stresses in the family, stresses in their relationships, serious health problems at workplace. So we're looking at a situation of the person bouncing back, the person being able to cope with this and survive, like getting back yourself and bouncing back. Different things we can do to promote resilience. We can provide basic needs, like access to food, can help that person to be resilient. Then access to shelter, access to health care. Then at the mental level, we can help that person get back some sense of control. When you have some sense of control over your life or the happenings around you, it also helps you to bounce back or to be resilient. Then we can also provide access to information, access to training. Then at the moral level, help that person to be able to forgive. It also helps. Then help the person to recognize rules and regulations. The person may have gone past the point of caring. I don't care what wants to happen, let it happen. So help that person to be able to recognize rules and regulations, adhere to moral codes. Then a sense of contribution to a greater good. At the spiritual level, you can also reinforce religious beliefs. Places of worship can also help that person too, to build resilience. Then social level, you mobilize social support, like presence of family, helping the family understand and being supportive of that person. Then even the leaders in the community, you can also involve them in programs to help that person belong back and build the person's resilience. So now we're coming back to mental health and psychosocial support. We are bothered about mental health and psychosocial support to help people build resilience. But in performing these services, there are certain principles that we must adhere to. The first of those principles is the human rights and equity. Everything you do has to respect the human rights of that individual. So, you must not violate that person's rights. You must recognize that person's rights, respect that person's rights, and uphold that person's rights. Then, when we're talking about equitable service, you're going to take into cognizance factors like age, race, sex, in providing your services too, because you have to understand that different people have different needs too. The next principle is participation. So you're not just meeting with that person and telling the person your ideas, or, oh, okay, I know this is what we're going to do and all that. No. You must have full participation of that person. That person must be involved in the process. You're more of a listener than a talker. So you're only just helping that person to clarify thoughts, and that person is like saying, okay, I want to do this. It has to be about that person. So there must be full participation of that person so that there's some sense of ownership. So the thoughts are coming from that person. You're only guiding. Then the next one is the principle of do no harm. So everything you do, every intervention you do has to be such that you're not going to harm that person eventually. So maybe you are working with maybe a Muslim girl, for example, who comes from a culture where she's supposed to be covered, and you are now helping her clarify her position in the land. Like, oh no, you don't need to do all this anymore. You don't need to do all that. You could actually be harming that person. In all that you do, it has to be such that you don't worsen that person's situation, or you don't cause harm to that person. So you're not imposing your beliefs, you're not imposing your ideas. It has to be relevant to that person's social status. Then you also build on available resources. Don't duplicate efforts, or don't try to do everything new. No, there are already existing practices, there are already existing tested and tried solutions already. So there's no point trying to duplicate effort. Instead, build on available resources. So somebody returns back and the person has a skill in carpentry, for example. Don't just say, okay, so just go and do buying and selling. You can build on that existing skill. If the person is interested, take it up from there. And then the last is looking at multi-layered support. Here we use the Interagency Standing Committee pyramid of interventions for MHPSF, where you have 4 levels of support. So you have the basic services and security, where you're just addressing basic needs. Then you have the next level, which is the community and family support. Then you now have the next level, which is non-specialized support. So, like the person needs psychological counseling. So at this 3rd stage, you can provide psychological counseling. That's where you have psychosocial first aid. Then the 4th level is where you now have specialized services, where you refer to clinicals, you refer to a specialist for mental care. And so, like, identifying care at the different levels. So, like, everybody you meet has varying needs, and so some may not even require, so like 10 people who experienced a crisis, for example, they are going to react differently. Some may not even be affected by it at all. They may have no reactions. Some may have mild reactions. Some may have severe reactions. So depending on the reaction of that person, or the mental well-being of that person, is going to determine what you need to do. So like social workers, you can provide psychosocial first aid. But in a case where there is some serious mental issues, like you need to involve specialist care, like psychiatrists and clinical psychologists. So in referring, you have to take into cognizance the fact that psychiatric and clinical that was what I was trying to explain at the fourth level. Referral to psychiatric and clinical psychological care. But as a non-professional, you can't provide that. The best you can do is maybe psychological counseling if you're a counselor, or psychological first aid if you're equipped with that. So we move on to psychological first aid. Go on. Okay. What is psychological first aid? It's practical assistance to people who have recently suffered various stressors or crises. So it's non-intrusive. It assesses their needs and concerns. You provide people with their basic needs, maybe like their basic needs, food, water. Like we said earlier, those are things that can help people build resilience. So you're helping people build resilience. So it's about listening, not pressuring people to talk. So you're not like asking, okay, give me the sequence of things, the way it happened, in the order it happened. No. You're just listening. You don't have to have the particular order in which it happened. So you're just comforting them, helping them to feel calm. You're helping them connect with information services and social support and preventing them from further harm. Like in the process of providing psychological first aid, if maybe somebody is telling you, I sometimes think of killing myself, or I have tried killing myself before, you know that such a case is not for PFA. You are escalating the case. You are now referring for clinical or psychiatric care. So people do better over the long term if they're able to feel safe, connected to others, if they are calm and hopeful, if they have access to social support or physical support, they're able to build themselves or their significant others, people who may hurt themselves, then people who may hurt or endanger the lives of others. At that point, you know it's not psychological first aid they need, but they need referral or clinical care. Then the action principles of psychological first aid. The first thing you do is to look. So you prepare and you look. When looking, you're checking for safety. You're checking for people with obvious, urgent, basic needs. So in checking for safety, you're observing. Is it safe for me to be in this place? Is it safe for me? Is it safe for others? Will my presence in this place be safe for others? So if it's not safe for you to be in the location, then provide care or provide support from a distance. Do not endanger yourself or endanger others. So it's important that you look. Then you check for people with obvious basic needs. Not everybody reacts in the same manner. So there are some people that may have more serious needs than others. So you check for those people with urgent basic needs. Then also check for people with serious distress reactions. So maybe like people in shock. So for those with serious distress reactions, you know that you have to refer immediately, but you have to be observant and look. Then the next thing you do is listen. By listening, that means you're making contact. In making contact, you make contact respectfully. So you respectfully make contact, introduce yourself, introduce your position. So you are able to build trust. Then your presence there is just to listen. So don't assume that you already know what the need of that person is. No. Ask, what is the most important thing I can do for you right now? Don't assume their needs, but ask what they need to be done. Listen to them and make them feel calm. Then, after maintaining contact, the next thing you do is link. Do not provide services that you are not equipped to provide. For example, you are in an accident scene and you are going to try to stop bleeding. You don't know how to do that. You don't have the training for that. So don't try to do what you're not equipped to deal with. Rather, refer. Don't assume that you can do everything. No. Stay within your limits and connect them with the services and care that they could presently need. Connect them with their loved ones for support. Then in exiting, no matter what the experience was, try to exit in a cordial manner. So, exit in a way that you are fresh, that the next time we meet would also be on a good note. So even if we had an experience of shouting and you angry and all that, always try to end the contact in a cordial manner. Then do not promise what you cannot do. Be honest and truthful. So if you cannot link that person with that service the person needs, do not promise you know what to do. Be factual and say, okay, I cannot link you up with this help right now, but I would try and look for a way. So don't do what you can't do, but stay within your limits and try to link them with resources they need. Any questions?
My question goes like this. If you have a survivor that is so seriously traumatized and she's not forthcoming with any information that will pay the case, what do you do? Because I'm saying this is sometimes last year, the Native Lagos command who received the victim of sexual exploitation, she was interrogated or something like that. And she was in a shelter for over 20 minutes. She did not say anything. All the effort that we made to get one thing or the other so that we can proceed in our case did not come up with any effort. And every time at the point that she became very aggressive, to even trace her family was very difficult. But along the line, once somebody suggested that, okay, our back issue, maybe you or maybe so, luckily we were able to get a piece of paper where she wrote her mother's name and where she stayed somewhere in Lagos. So that was what we were able to reunite her there. Before then she could not say, so we had not survived to reunite her there. But 3 months later, the mother came to our office and reported that her daughter gave birth to maybe this girl from this will hair pass. So when she reported the case of her, she was about to travel to Delta State. Then the police arrested her for being possession of a she was in possession of her. How did she know about the child? So when the case was, it was then, it was the report of the mother that made us to know that she was pregnant throughout her stage, no symptom of the pregnancy. She did not talk, could not take her for anything. So how do you be such a maybe we have something like that in the future? Somebody is not forthcoming with any information.
What she needs is beyond psychological first aid. At this point, you need to escalate. She needs professional care or professional attention. So a clinical psychologist would be able to, it's not something that will happen once. From multiple sessions, would be able to help her and help her to speak. It's not something you can force. It just has to be her now, like trusting and being able to come out of that trauma situation. So there's no special thing that you can do. You can only just refer her for professional help at that point. Because hers is a serious case that needs professional assistance. It's not what you can just do as just a normal social worker without proper training. Okay, so what now happened next? Okay, so when you are making that person relive that experience, and you make it could even get worse for that person because that person could now even become more withdrawn. So when your work is just to listen. And now if you see that it's a situation that, oh, okay, this person needs more, you can now escalate for professional support. Yes.
Okay. I had a situation sometime last year, or better still, 2019. And it was about this guy who came back. He had a very terrible experience on the trip. And when he got back, with the help of the Red Cross, his case came to my desk and I had to deal with it. Now, the situation was such that he believed his destiny is not in this country. And in spite of his experience, he still wanted to go back. So we sat down, we talked, and at a point I felt I could not deal with his trauma experience. I referred him to my colleagues at the International Committee of the Red Cross, and while they were taking him through the processes, he decided, one day he was supposed to report at their office, he declined. The next thing we heard was that the guy had returned back to Libya and through the back door. Now, since after this case, I have always wondered what would have triggered such an action. And because I do not want a repeat of such a situation, I feel like I should put it on the table and listen to other people's opinions. Thank you.
So, like you were trying to help him deal with that trauma he experienced. You know, different people have different reactions to trauma. In his own case, it wasn't just the trauma. He already had these social factors making him know that his destiny is not in Nigeria. And so dealing with that is to find out, okay, what is that thing that makes Nigeria not good enough for your destiny? So you are helping that person build resilience in the sense that if his challenge is economic means, for example, so why is your destiny not in Nigeria? Maybe he doesn't want to be poor forever or something like that. So if you are able to address that thing that is the stressor, that's the only way that person will be able to thrive. So you must be able to identify what the stressor is. Okay, let me use that example of do no harm. Maybe you have a migrant that has been identified in a country, and the conditions in which that person is living is appalling. The person is suffering abuse. The person is not okay. And you think the best thing for this person will be, oh, okay, let me assist you to come back home. It's going to be better back home. And maybe the home that person migrated from, maybe that's a home where she was already suffering abuse, or the home is not comfortable. You bringing her back to that home does not help her case. Do you get? So you're not applying the principle of do no harm. So you've not identified the initial stressor that made her to leave that home in the first place. Has to be taken care of before the person can thrive in that home. So in his case, it was not just the trauma, but there were already some social factors. There were already some factors in place that were already affecting him being willing to stay and willing to take the risk of going through the back door again. So we must always listen during our sessions. Listen hard, listen to be able to follow up with the person to know what those underlying issues are.
I don't think that person is traumatized personally. I don't want to stay in Nigeria. That is my major problem. I don't think it's trauma that is pursuing that person. That person is just not comfortable in Nigerian society. So I think we should not feel that anybody that comes back to Nigeria and wants to live is traumatized. That's just all.
Sometimes there are cognitive biases, cognitive distortions that makes this individual to believe that I cannot make it in Nigeria. And so because the mindset is he or she cannot make it in this country except they travel out, they will always go. And so if you're going to help this individual then you have to address what is the root cause of that thought. Don't forget that it is our thought that makes us. So whatever it is that you think, that is who you will become. And then that is also what will direct your behavior. So when you believe that I cannot, that word is powerful. I cannot make it. There is nothing anybody will say. Even if they are giving you 1 million naira every day, you will still think you have not made it because you feel there is something better out there. So what you would want to change at that level is the thought pattern. I've seen people who will tell you that because I'm fair-skinned, I cannot stay in this country because the color of skin that God has given me is meant for out there. I've seen it. They will tell you it's meant for out there. I have also seen a black person who tells you that the way I see myself, I am not made for this country. And so she does everything humanly possible to get out of this country. Because that is what the mind believes. Until you're able to change that thought pattern and help this individual to see that there are better things to do, they will keep going back. And so for that individual, I agree with you, they are not traumatized because they feel there is something that is directing the behavior. And so the behavior is being directed by the fact that they think there is a destiny for them out there. So they keep going back, irrespective. But again, the truth is, it's not as if they're not traumatized. One day, after they had done everything, and she talked about resilience earlier on, the ball will not be able to bounce again. That's when they will now suffer a total breakdown, and then there may not be help for them.
I don't want to argue too much. I just want to keep to what everybody has said. I had a return migrant who was neither traumatized nor, but he didn't want to stay. He didn't tell me. On arrival, I forwarded this guy. At the end of everything, I followed up on him to see that he keyed into it. And luckily for him, it was when a training came from NDDC. I put his name there, he went in for the same, came out 2 weeks later. I was given an amount of money, $500,000 to be precise. I was not asking, what do you want to do? How do you start investing this money? He said, I'm coming. 2 weeks passed. The next thing was, we even got him an apartment to stay. He stayed with a friend, he picked quarrel, blah, blah, blah. I was trying to pet him, don't worry, everything will be fine. When you establish, you will not have any reason to have time to sit back in the house and start fighting with everyone. I didn't know he was battling with something else in his mind. Neither did he tell me he had intentions of going back. A week later, I got a call from Ghana. Hello, hi, who is this? He called his name and said, yes, you know you are my mom and I love you so much. On arrival, God brought me straight to your table, as if I knew that the hand of God that will help me go back. It's funny, right? So, I was wondering, who is this? I called his name, he said, yes, but my voice is supposed to have known me by now. I said, this is not Nigerian number. I said, yes, I'm calling you from Ghana. My destiny is not in Nigeria. Sorry, I can't stay, but I'll tell you why in 2 days. I got quiet. I let him be. 2 days later, he called me again and told me that something he had not told anybody. He said he's going to tell me because he has come to know and trust me as a person. What is this matter? Cult-related issues. He can't go home, that they will kill him if he goes home. So, you want to tell me that such a person is traumatized too? No. He's very conscious of what he's doing. He knows what he's running from. And he can't face it because he knows that the people he hit on will hit back at him, and the penalty is death. So, to keep his head and live, he has to leave. So, these are some of the challenges we face in this with all migrants, and you want to say, do this, do that. They'll be looking at you. All they need is for you to help them get that financial assistance to head out again. So it's not always trauma here, trauma there, and all that. There are all these multifaceted, and there are different dimensions to working with one understand.
Yeah, thank you. So it depends on individual needs. But the psychosocial first aid, like in your session with him, if he had opened up about the cult issues, you would be looking for a solution to removing that stressor. Like even encouraging him, maybe looking for means for him to travel or something, but looking for how to remove that stressor so that the person can have mental well-being.
Which travel the right way. Because whether you like it or not, the tendency as a human being to migrate. If you're in a place and you don't feel comfortable, you have all the right to leave. People leave for various reasons, which is part of their human rights. What we advocate is that do it well, and if you're going to leave, don't go through the rules that they never like. That's it. And I know doing it and getting the visa is not too easy, but if you must go, that is the required means. I'm sure the guy that went to Ghana is still moving to ask me. So if you want to go to Ghana, you can go to Ghana and just follow the normal also.
Some persons will share different experiences, but some persons will realize that those some persons that their mindset was wired towards the industry. Now, 2019 or 2018, I went to Lagos to receive some attorneys, and there is one particular guy. The guy was very hostile, restless. So I drew the attention of a doctor, a psychiatrist. So our counselors were also talk to him. So during that process, my boss recommended that to take me to psychiatrist so that the psychologist and lawyers can talk to him. So at the point, he said that he is not possible. So while he was going through counseling and all that, we were not about for you. About 120,000. You know what this guy? This guy, why I took him to psychiatric hospital? And the guy told me, said, boss, you know that I'm not going. I want to just respect my dad. Man, just go and go through this process. Once I'm not finished, doctor said, I do okay. Whatever I'm answering for him, you know what this guy did? He went to meet the landlord. He said, landlord, don't give me to I'll kill you. Yes! He collected the money from the landlord. The property was for you. Mattress, and everything. Because what the time. And he called me on phone. He said, boss, you went to story well. I don't move. I don't feel die for this Nigeria. Nigeria, I cannot die here. I will die for abroad. I don't stay in Nigeria. I don't want to stay. So such persons, if you like give them 1 billion, their mind is one kind of already. I can't stay here. Yes, so that's some of the issues. So it's just a mindset. That was it. Thank you.
Something is smelling good in the room. So we have, we're going to take lunch now for 30 minutes. So please, let's be back in our seats and ready to go at 3:40 p.m. 3:40 p.m. for our final and last session for the day with high energy and excitement. All right, so lunch now until 3:40 p.m. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay.
reintegration and economic empowerment. I believe everybody in this room is an expert in this area. Because even our questions in MHPSS, they were bordering on reintegration. So we won't need to spend much time. Reintegration, reinclusion, reincorporation of a person. So it's like there's a there must be a return for there to be reintegration. So it's like adjusting back, fitting in again into the community or society. We know the difference between reintegration and integration now. Integration, you are going somewhere, you are in a different place, you are fitting in there. While reintegration is you are coming back and fitting in again where you left. So in IOM, we like to look at reintegration in a integrated. We like to use an integrated approach for reintegration. You look at it along different levels. So you're looking at it at the individual level, at the structural level, and at the community level. For reintegration to be sustainable, the person being reintegrated, I will refer to that person as the returnee or the return migrant, must have achieved levels of economic self-sufficiency and social stability within their communities so that they will be able to cope with the drivers of migration. Those things that made the person migrate in the first place. You have to be able to equip that person economically, psychologically, in all spheres, so that when that person is faced with those migration drivers, the person can make an informed choice. So I want to travel, not because traveling is a necessity or not because I must travel, but I am traveling because I want to travel. It is what I want to do, not necessarily what I must do. I don't know if you understand that point I'm trying to make. So your deciding to migrate should be a matter of choice, not a matter of need. That's the only time that reintegration is sustainable. Please go on. Okay. So now we're going to be looking at the factors that affect sustainable reintegration. Like I said earlier, we look at reintegration at different levels, at the individual level, at the structure, at the social level, then at the community level. So we need to take cognizance of different factors at different levels that impact on reintegration being sustainable or not. Next slide. So at the structural environment, some cross-cutting problems that we could have at that point are maybe like the policies, the law, insecurity. So you're looking not at the individual now, we're looking at the society, the social environment that person resides. You're looking at the social environment, environment that person resides. So could it be the laws? Could it be the practices? What are those things? The policies? What are those things that could affect the reintegration being sustainable enough? So if we're looking at the individual level or at the community level, we're looking at things like maybe discrimination, lack of jobs, perceptions, like you're 40 and you don't have a house, you don't have a car, you feel like you're a failure. Such perceptions, things like that. The labor force, community practices, Then at the individual level, we're going to be looking at things like your age, your skills, sex, gender, like maybe a young man who is 21, for example, very strong and active. There are some jobs that he can do very easily, different from a man that is maybe 45. So the uh, output is different. So at the individual level, things like age, expectations to assets, skills, education, social status, and even debt can also impact on the reintegration and make it unsustainable. So that's where you can say, oh, okay, why did this reintegration assistance fail, or why did it not work? These are the different things that could cause it not to work. So things we can do at the different levels. At the individual level, provide comprehensive reintegration assistance across economic, social, and psychosocial levels. So, you are a returnee. I want to provide reintegration assistance for you, and I want to set up a business for you, and I open a shop for you, maybe a tailoring shop. I open a tailoring shop for you. But that's not going to be sustainable, because I'm looking at only the individual level. I'm not taking into cognizance the social level. Maybe you are the senior child in your family, and they expect that you are supposed to be paying the school fees of your younger ones and feeding the family. That business does not even have time to get on its feet before it may have to die, because I didn't take into cognizance that social factor. So you must take into cognizance the environment around the person. So beyond the individual, the environment, then even the psychosocial level too. Okay, you come back and I open a tailoring shop for you. Meanwhile, you've not even come out of the trauma that you experienced when you traveled. So you are not yet ready to deal with people that are coming to your business every day. So you have to take care of the three aspects. You don't just do one. Integration has to cover the three aspects for it to be sustainable. Then you must be flexible. You must prepare. By preparing, I mean, it's not just the first day you just meet the person, you just, let's start to do this. No. You try to understand the context from which that person is coming. So if it's somebody that is returning, you want to know about the person's activities prior return, so that you have an understanding of what challenges this person may be facing. So you prepare yourself by getting information beforehand. Then at the point you are interacting with the person, you have to be flexible. One size does not fit it all. You don't just assume that, every young person, is either you do tailoring or you do salon or you do provision shop. No. That person may even have an idea that is, your work is just to guide the process. So you have to be flexible. Don't come from a point of view that this is how it is and this is how it should be. No. You see new things every day. Then you also follow up. So I set up a shop for you and that's the end. No. I set up a shop for you. I also ask, how is business going? What are the challenges you have? It has to be a long-term continuum of care. So, because that person could also have further challenges, which if you do not address, that business you have set up will crumble and you are back to zero. So, after the setup, you also follow up. Then at the community level, you can foster communities of origin in reintegration planning to strengthen their resilience. You can say, a lot of people migrated from Oredo. The fact that a lot of people are migrating from Oredo, what's happening? Is it that there are no jobs in Oredo? So at the community level, you can also address such things that could foster them staying when they come back. Then you also address the drivers of migration at the community level. Do you now need to do awareness raising? Do you need to advocate, maybe if it's infringement of rights, harassment, security. What are those drivers of the migration at the community level? So at the individual level, counseling, that's a reintegration support. Provision of cash. Sometimes the person may come back, even before you are talking about opening a business for you, you may need to give the person some cash to meet some basic needs. You know, all individuals are on different levels on the livelihood pathway. So like for somebody that is just at that sustenance level, doesn't have food to eat, you now have to open a provision shop for that person that is at the sustenance level. In 3 months, the shop will not be there because they will feed from the shop. So you need to understand the level of that person to know what kind of intervention to propose. So sometimes you could give provision of cash. You could also provide training, vocational training, technical trainings for the person, if the person is interested in skills. Then you could also provide legal support. Like maybe the person is, maybe somebody that was trafficked. And the person is interested in prosecution. You can provide legal support for that person. It could also be maybe somebody that is going through abuse in the home, for example, and needs legal support for separation. You can also provide legal support for sustainable reintegration. Then psychological assistance, referrals, access to social services. The person may need medical care. You facilitate access. Then at the community level, identification of community needs. So what are the gaps in this community? What are the needs? Then linking returnees and local populations. For example, you can have community-based reintegration where they can form cooperatives, and you can say, like we have in Igobasua, for example. They produce a lot of pineapple there. So there's like an opportunity for value chain for pineapple, and we set up a pineapple processing factory there. So things like that can be done at the community level. Then psychosocial support to avoid stigmatization. So not just, sometimes you can meet with the family of the person returning or the person that has returned. Speak with them so that they can accept the person coming back, to prepare them for the return, so that the person that comes in will not be uncomfortable with stigmatization or be uncomfortable in the family. The reintegration process. Okay, so for reintegration, we have, it doesn't just start at when the person comes. We have before the person comes, then when you've come back, and after you have been set up, the follow-up stage. So at the point of return, the first contact you have with the returnee, you like try to, if it's maybe like they've contacted you that somebody has been identified, the person is coming back home and all that, try to do family tracing, try to counsel the family to prepare them for that person's return. If that's not the case and it's like emergency returns for humanitarian purposes, like what we have from Libya, upon return, you assess contact, assess vulnerabilities. So yes, everybody returns, but people have varying needs and varying vulnerabilities. So you're like going to, is this person a single mother? Is this person a single father? Is this person an unaccompanied child? Is this a minor? Is this person a victim of trafficking? Is this person a victim of kidnap? Is this person needing medical attention? Is this person having mental health challenges? Those are the different stratas. So you need to assess vulnerabilities. Then the next step is the business skills training. For the business skills training, we don't want to set up a business for somebody that doesn't have a basic financial skills, for example. So just like basic financial literacy, managing your books, understanding the concept of profit and loss, customer relationships. Not everybody will be set up in a business, but at least everybody receives this business skills training. In case you decide you're interested in a business, you have the basic skills needed to run a business. After the business skills training, we then have the reintegration counseling. So prior return, where it's not an emergency case, prior return, that returnee would have also gone through some reintegration counseling to identify what you need and all that to prepare. But in the case of emergency evacuations, the reintegration counseling is after that contact, you've already returned because there was no time for all that in bringing you back. So we have the reintegration counseling. During the reintegration counseling, you are documenting information on the person. Then you're also probing to find out what are the skills you have. You want to understand what are the capabilities you already have that we can build on. What are your thoughts? What are the things you want to do? So we know in what way we can support. Then you're also looking at what are the resources available to this individual. So yes, I want to help you stay and not go back. I want to economically empower you. But maybe you want to set up a business that would cost maybe 10 million naira, for example. It is at the point of reintegration counseling that we're able to establish, okay, these are the resources available. You understand? So you actually know your limits. Don't promise what you cannot give. What is it you want to do? That's where you get to understand what the person wants to do. That will guide you in whatever you're setting up for that person. That's where you also understand the stressors that person was experiencing before traveling to try and prevent it happening again and the person now wanting to travel back. Then after the reintegration counseling, you then have the implementation of the business plans. At the point of reintegration counseling, you help the person develop a business plan and then the implementation of the business plan. And then you still monitor. You cannot also rest. You need to still follow up. How is it going? What are the challenges? Somebody can come and tell you, they just broke into my shop and stole everything. Anything can happen along the way. The person can even set up a business. And after running the business for 3 months, discover that, no, this is not what I want to do. This thing is not working for me. I think I want to do fish farming. Totally different idea. But you cannot force that person to remain in that place where it is not working. That is where flexibility we talked about earlier comes in. You have to be flexible. And you have to always listen closely. You have to listen closely and be flexible. Okay. So we already talked about reintegration counseling. This is just the definition. Provision of information to the returnee on the reintegration process. Collection of information on the returnee. Including assessment of potential situations of vulnerability, identification of needs, skills, motivations, opportunities. Providing first-line emotional and psychological support to the returnee. So what's the role of the case manager or the counselor? So upon return, the person in charge of your reintegration process, the first step is to engage the returnee through reintegration counseling in order to better understand his or her background, professional qualifications, skills or resources that could facilitate sustainable reintegration. The next step is to assess these needs and resources. So assess the specific needs and resources in a holistic manner, taking into consideration economic, social, and psychosocial dimensions. So, you are a welder, for example. You have skills in welding. So it makes sense that I can set up a welding workshop for you. And you stay in New Benin area. And there are like 100 welding workshops in New Benin area. Even though it makes sense that you already have that skill and I can build on that skill, it doesn't make sense that I set up that business for you in New Benin area that already has 100 competitors and you may not be able to thrive. So you have to assess those needs and resources. Look at it not just from the individual's angle, also from the social, the environment of that person and the community where that person resides. Then you provide support to design a comprehensive and realistic reintegration plan. So it's not just designing a reintegration plan, but that reintegration plan has to be realistic and comprehensive. So at that point of counseling, I'm identifying, okay, what are those things that could make this business fail? What are those risks you perceive you could have in running this business? What's the worst that could happen? What could make this shop close? So you're identifying those needs and you are already thinking of factors to mitigate this risk. Oh, okay, theft. Okay, so that means you have to rent a shop in a place where there's iron door. Things like that. Those risks have to come out and the factors that will mitigate the risk have to come out. Then the last point is follow-up. So don't set up and relax. No, you must follow up and be flexible to, is it that you're adding to the value chain? So you can set up a fish pond for somebody. And when you visit in 1 year, you're buying the person over so the person can start drying in addition to just selling. So follow up to find out different ways of either expanding or if the person needs a new business idea, but there must be follow-up for it to be sustainable. So in the process of reintegration counseling, you must respect the returnee's ideas, the returnee's wishes. Do not impose, but rather you're listening. So you must respect that person's aspirations, respect the person's fears, respect the person's ideas and dreams. Then you must acknowledge, help them to maintain and reestablish full self-confidence. So this is the experience you've gone through. But I'm helping you to build confidence in yourself. Believe you can help yourself. Don't think you have to phone me as your caseworker. You need this one. Okay, and so I need... Be able to think within yourself. Be able to feel... the returnee should feel that they are capable to help themselves. So you help build their self-esteem. When you are doing the reintegration counseling, there's also a question that you ask too. What impact does this assistance have for this return migrants? So what is the impact of this? Okay, so I'm setting up a tailoring shop for you. It's not just for economic empowerment. Does it have any impact on the community? Does it have any impact on the individual? Like, does it fit into the business plan of that region? Like maybe the government is having some incentives for people in agriculture, for example. So there's already like an attraction there that if you have an agric-driven business, you would have access to maybe a grant from the government and all that. So that person has to be able to feel driven, as in own the idea. Don't feel that you just told me to do this. No. There must be like a reinforcement of that person's inner capabilities. Then evaluation, helping them recognize their resources. And okay, so we've talked about this. Establishing okay. Before integration counseling, the first thing you do, pick an appropriate place. Like I can't be having integration counseling in the marketplace. So you need to have a quiet place so that there can be like some form of confidentiality. Then establishing a climate of trust. I just meet you and I just say, hey, so how far now? What do you now want to do now? When you don't believe I can help you, will you tell me your problem? No. There has to be some establishment of trust. Then you explain the reintegration process. So I'm meeting you, I'm telling you, okay, so this is how it works, this is how much is available, this is how much we can go more than if you need something more, this is how it works. So I meet you, you give me these documents, I need these documents, and within a time frame of so, we can get this done. So let the person know everything that is going to happen. So it's not like I don't know if they do, okay, today you go call me, tomorrow you go call me. No. Everybody has to understand how the process works. Then you assess vulnerability. Because it's not the same thing you can do for everybody. You must know what vulnerabilities that person has to be able to tailor your reintegration assistance. Then you design the reintegration plan, close the first session, and plan follow-up. Economic reintegration assistance. Economic is not the only one. No. You know, you can provide psychosocial support, but most of the time, economic reintegration assistance is hampered upon because when you find out why the people travel, most of the time, or a lot, let me not say most of the time, a lot of the time, people will tell you, because I don't have funds to feed, or something like that. So that's why economic reintegration assistance is also very integral. Even when we're providing psychosocial, you find that economic also comes into the package too, to help that person's reintegration be sustainable. What are those things that will make this person not complete this training? Sometimes you can register somebody to learn a skill, and the person drops out after 1 month because they don't have transport fare to go. So things like that, you have to factor what are those things that will make this process not work, and include them in the reintegration assistance. So yes, I'm paying for you to learn this skill, but I would also maybe provide lunch for you or transport for you to access this basic sustenance allowance. Important to remember, reintegration can be considered sustainable when the returnee has achieved economic self-sufficiency, social stability within their communities, and psychosocial well-being, which will help them to be able to cope with the drivers of migration. So those things that make people want to travel, you're being able to resist those things is because maybe your feet is steady now. That is when reintegration is sustainable. When you are able to cope with those drivers of migration, and when migration is a want, not a necessity. So collaboration and networking to extend the type of quality of services offered to the beneficiaries must always be explored. Follow up. After setup, you must always follow up. Thank you.